Today I'm going to answer another viewer's question, and it's how do you start a painting? I'm going to use this paper which is 100% cotton. It's made by Mead and Art Supplies, and there'll be a link in the description of this video where you can get 10% off everything over on their website. And now, starting a painting, I like to keep everything simple. So if I'm going to do a drawing, essentially I just mark out just the basic elements where if I need to know where something is, essentially. So I've put the horizon line in very lightly, and I'm just marking out roughly where the water's going to be. Keeping it very simple. I don't want a tight drawing, basically. If the tighter the drawing, it's kind of, you'll end up doing a tight painting. So just mark out the very kind of bare minimum that you need. And I'll just add some water to the well and just mix up a few very kind of basic colours. So I'm just adding a touch of blue to just some of the grey that's left over on the palette there, and I'll just put a little well of raw sienna in and just keep everything kind of very wet. And again, I'll just loosen up the grey that's left behind there from a previous painting and just add a touch more blue to that, and just put in a little bit of alizarin crimson. And a touch more blue into that well. And that should be more than enough to get me started. And so I want to keep everything loose, so I'm just going to give a quick mist of water over there with the spray bottle, just to loosen the paper up a bit. And I think the trick is not to worry too much, so I'll just go straight in, just a big stroke of blue there, and then I'll just add some raw sienna and just touching it, mixing it together, just allowing it to run down. I'll grab that blue-grey mix and just bring, maybe that's a cloud over the top of it. Again, just allowing it all to mix together on the page. And I added a touch more alizarin crimson in, and now just some clean water, and just touch it here and there. Leave a few kind of like areas of white. And I'll just grab that bead and then just bring that down to the horizon line. And I've got the board at about 30 degrees. I've got that on my tabletop easel. I'll just mix up like slightly darker blue-grey, just with some blue and some burnt sienna. And where it's all wet, I'll just bring that in straight over the top and just try and find like a pleasing shape, I suppose. And being sort of quite careful just to leave those little white areas that I left behind. And grab some of that slightly lighter blue-grey and just put some smaller, more distant clouds in. And I'll just reflect some of that sky colour just down in the water area, and then just soften that off with some clean water. And also being careful just to leave behind a few white areas reflecting down in that water. And now just grab that bead that's formed there and just bring that down over the land area. and just pick up a bit more raw sienna and mix that in with what's on the palette there, so it kind of forms like a warm grey, I suppose. And then just touch that in, bring that down for the land, just allowing it to touch the water in a few places just so it runs down. And there'll be kind of like a wet sandbank in the foreground there. Just bring that all across and just soften up any sort of hard edges that are forming. Okay, I'm going to allow that just to dry off naturally, and it's been about maybe 4-5 minutes and the paper's not fully dry, and so I've just mixed up a blue with a touch of alizarin crimson in it, and I'm just going to put in some distance, and because the paper's still slightly damp, it should kind of soften on its own. And kind of water control is kind of key for this, really. If you want to do this sort of thing yourself, then I always think, look at the paper, if you kind of like look at it from an angle, and as long as the shine has gone off of the water, it should be about right just to put in the distance, and then it kind of naturally diffuses. Now I'm ever so slightly just varying the mix of the blue and just bringing it across. And you can see already where the paper was slightly damp, it's softening naturally on its own. And this is at Morstan Quay in Norfolk, and there's kind of like distant tree line and a church off there in the distance. I'll just grab some burnt sienna and just suggest maybe kind of like a few tiled rooftops. And then even more blue burnt sienna, just kind of mix kind of like a dark sort of grey brown, and bring that along the bottom there of the tree line. Just suggest a few kind of trees and bushes that are a little bit closer, and that also helps to push that distant hill tree line back. Okay, grab a touch more raw sienna and just mix that in with the blue grey that's on the palette, and bring that across for the sort of mid-ground field. It's kind of like a scrubby marsh. And then just bring that across, allowing it to touch the previous wash, and then so it all just kind of runs together. And ever so slightly just varying the mix. Some cobalt blue, more raw sienna, making it slightly darker, slightly warmer as it comes into the foreground. And just bring that over to the other side, trying to leave a few areas unpainted from the previous part of the wash. It kind of just suggests that maybe there's a bit of light catching on the grass, and touch warmer there with some burnt sienna, and then just soften that off, allowing it all to mix together. I've just defined the edge of the waterline there as well. I just mixed up a touch more blue, a touch more raw sienna, so it's kind of like a dirty green type colour. And just define the bank on the other side of the creek there. And that's even more ultramarine, burnt sienna, and kind of like a mid-dark colour, and just touch that in a few places. And it kind of just outlines the edge of the bank of the creek. Also just a few touches on the land area for a few shadows and grasses. I'll make that a touch darker, burnt sienna and ultramarine again. And so it's just slightly darker as we come into the foreground, and that helps with the perspective. Okay, I'll just grab some of that blue-grey that's left in the palette there, mix a touch of alizarin, a bit more cobalt blue, and then I'll just bring that across. It's kind of almost semi-dry brush now where the paper's dried off, and just bring that sandbank down, and then just bring it along the edge of the creek, allowing it to touch that dark in places as well, so it kind of runs together. And I'll just repeat that on the other side. Kind of always thinking about edges as I go as well, just trying to soften things off, so I don't want any too many hard edges. I can always add some defined harder edges later on. Okay, that's that wash finished, so I'll allow that to dry fully. Okay, I'm just going to add a bit of definition now, maybe like a few boats and just a touch of definition to the banks. So I've mixed up a dark again with some ultramarine, burnt sienna as usual. And I think I'll just switch to the smaller brush. I'm just going to very simply just put in some boat shapes. So little more really than just a silhouette, and keeping it very simple, very loose. I'll just grab a bit of burnt sienna, and maybe it's a slightly different colour boat. It's a little bit closer, so you keep it a little bit on the browner side. I'll just add a touch of reflection to the boat, so just with some leftover grey in the palette. I'll put the reflections in for the masts while I've got that colour. and just bring those straight down, slightly wavy broken line. Go back into that grey, and I'll just very simply suggest a mast. And just bring that straight up. Slightly broken line as well, just always seems to look better somehow. Obviously taking a bit of care to make sure I keep it in line with where I've already put the reflection in. So just mix even more dark, and I think I put a boat in just out of the water there, just on the edge of the bank. So I'll have that facing the other way, I think. And just add a touch of shadow across the land. Again, just add a very simple mast. And just reflect that down into the water. And I think I'll put a few very simple, just basic lines really, just for a few distant boats. And because they're further away, it's really just the masts that tell you that it's a boat. And using some very kind of light watery paint just suggests the reflections. It all helps to create the illusion that it's a watery surface. And I just add a touch of definition just to the banks. Just with some very dark paint. And soften the edges and just simply put in the reflections. And same on the other side. Just adds a touch of definition in the foreground. And also just adds to the feeling of perspective. And just a few random kind of dry brush marks there just for some texture in the field. I'll just go back into that wet sand colour. And just very kind of simply soften the edge and spread the paint out with some clean water. And again, just add some texture in the foreground. I'll just switch back to that size 8 sable. And just add a little bit of dry brush. Touch more dark paint, maybe a few more little posts there on the bank. just for a tiny bit of interest on the left hand side there. Okay, with that, I think that's the painting finished. Well, there you go. That's a nice, simple, loose painting of Morstan Quay in Norfolk. And I hope you got some ideas there on how you can start a loose landscape painting. And I think the key really is not to worry about it too much. Just go for it. Wet the paper, go straight in, some bold washes, allow it all to mix together. Do give it a try, and please let me know down in the comments what you think, or if you have any questions. And please subscribe if you haven't already, and give the video a like. You can follow me over on Patreon, where I'll be releasing exclusive videos every month, as well as you can see my YouTube videos a couple of days before everybody else, and completely ad free. There's a link down in the description where you can get 10% off at Mead & Art Supplies. And I'll be back again next week as usual with another video. So until then, happy painting, and see you then. Bye for now.